All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the TED Talk. We're back with another show, another week, and another guest, another first time guest on the panel, which I'm very delighted about. One of the people that I had the pleasure of sharing the Star Lauder Budapest major with, Launders himself, color commentator, guy with a lot of opinions, guy with a lot of content online, and an OG KZ player. The first OG KZ player that I have welcoming on the channel. Moham, thank you for coming over. How have you been?
Of course, AceZone bros. Of course, I'll come over to your
All
podcast.
right.
First thing I was wondering was, does TED Talk interfere with the SEO when
mm.
people are trying to look you up?
I don't actually know. By the way, I think it's just the fact that you got to think about the double D, right? It's kind of like an Ed and Eddie, the Cartoon Network cartoon type of vibe.
Right.
I think it's happened to me at least at the start. Sometimes I would just Google TED Talk and my show wouldn't appear, but I would just see a bunch of random TED Talks out there. But we're moving. It's a fight that we want to win. I don't know how many years it will
Nice.
take. Maybe I'll never do, but that's it. We're setting the goals high. We gotta fight the TED Talk, guys.
I love it. And you probably learned a lot along the way searching for your own videos.
Uh, yeah. That's actually true. I have watched some random TED Talk videos just because I'm trying to Google my own channel, but then they appear and I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. Let me
Yeah.
check it out. It's happened a bunch of times. I doubt anyone looking for the TED Talks has seen. Okay, there's a Counter Strike interview in there or a Counter Strike podcast. Let me check it out. I'm not sure what the vibe is. By the way, we're gonna start it off not speaking about Counter Strike. If you had a well, obviously this is your first TED Talk, right? But if you had
Uh,
a TED Talk presentation, what would your topic be? What's the go-to?
I think it would probably be how to be happy.
All right.
Yeah, I think it would probably be how to be happy. I think I see a lot of people overcomplicating life a little bit. I just read this little excerpt from Nietzsche that was is called "Why I Am So Clever," and it
Okay.
goes over how he eats better food, he goes for lots of walks, he doesn't think about questions that you can't answer, like questions about God and death and stuff like that that we've been pondering since the beginning of time, and he kind of puts it into plain words why people make themselves unhappy essentially and how to be happy. I think that would be a good thing that people need to have a TED talk to think about
You know what?
in
I
today's
actually
world.
I could actually imagine you providing a speech like a presentation on that topic. I think you'd nail it. It's
Thank you.
very is the simplicity of life. Worry about the
Mhm.
things that concern you. Actually, it's nice. Well, we are worrying ourselves with things that are not concerning us most of the time, which is what a bunch of people playing professional video games do, and we get very passionate about it, even though it doesn't directly impact our lives. So I guess to some extent it does, but that's why we're here in this fine day, or well, fine evening, I guess for me. Um, we are here to talk about what has been going on in the world of professional Counter Strike. Now, Cluj, PGL Cluj-Napoca, the one event that I framed before the start of the event as the major before the major of the first season of the year, simply because of how stacked it was, the format, all of the teams. It's basically like we had a stage 3 of the major with the playoffs without team spirit, right? Everybody else was there. So for me that was a massive warm-up event. Obviously you had you were there, you were in Bucharest, you were working the event live. So before we get into the Counter-Strike swing of things, please let us know, how was it behind the scenes? How was your experience at the event? That was obviously one of the first PGL events in front of a live audience in Romania in a while, right? Because they usually use the studios in Bucharest, but this time it was Cluj-Napoca. You had the live audience, the arena, and it was a more unique experience. So how did you find it?
Well, first of all, they would, like PGL would love to do an event in Bucharest, but like as you know, there's no stadium there. Like
Right.
when they've tried to, I was like, why don't you guys build one? They kind of told them that. And they're like, yeah, why don't we just build one? And honestly, though, like I feel like they should try to invest in making some kind of arena because they run so many events over in Bucharest. But Cluj isn't very far away. It's also a younger town. It's a university town, so it has
Mm.
a big Counter Strike sort of audience. So you obviously have that famous mouse pad that people have, or that someone had from Cluj from 2015, the
Yep.
major. So there's history there. it's an event they're trying to make, and they want to make it their flagship event. I saw this Reddit thread about us drinking beer, like they had the photo of us drinking beer, and because production brought us the beer, and that
Yeah.
was started with Sponge and Machine last year. And people in the thread were like, "Oh, this is unfortunately this is just obviously an ad for a beer, and that's just sports. They try to make this wholesome moment, but it's really just advertising." Well, that's just not true. They
All
wanted to
right.
make it a tradition. It was from the last year when Sponge and Machine did it, and then they gave us beer for the next game, and then it's like late night on semifinals day. Let's have some fun, and that's the kind of company that PGL are, and
Mm.
so they're trying to build some new roots in a place they've only run one other event in. Recurring audience is really cool when you go and see things that you signed last year. You're signing the things again. That's sort of what you're getting out of Cluj. Um, it's a really nice arena setup. I always like the 360 stage.
Yeah.
In general, I think there was about 7K people in there, which I think you want like about 7,000. You're not going to be able to tell a difference besides the photos between like 7,000 and 15,000.
Sure.
The first day or so was like people weren't loud enough, I think, for the teams, and there was like interesting moments where people were, like booing Mouse. But then last year, Mouse were like the most popular team in there. So there's a lot of things that we didn't know what to expect. Besides, well, we expected it to be very similar since we're only a year out from the first one. But
Mm.
it's always interesting to see how a culture germinates and evolves as time goes on, or what kind of things you get straight off the bat when you go somewhere new. But overall, lots of great Counter Strike, really good arena. Great that PGL have like a flagship CS event since they're here year round, um, and it's a place I'll always look forward to going back to.
You know what was one of the things that I noticed as I was watching the games, because we were obviously doing the Bulgarian broadcast for the playoffs as well. I noticed that because the first day of the playoffs was a Friday, right? And the game started very early. They started at 10 a.m. local time, which is also 10 a.m. for me. So I'm like waking up a little bit sleepy, go over to the studio, we set up, we sit down. And I noticed that there was actually a decent amount of people for a Friday morning, which is a work day and it's not a bank holiday. I don't know if it was the camera
Hmm.
angles or what was the vibe like, but from my perspective, because we had arena sounds in our headphones, I actually felt like there was a decent amount of people for a morning of a working day.
Yeah, so and a lot of people maybe don't, but like for trying to fill up a stadium on Friday and Thursday is like the hardest thing. And
Yeah.
at best case, you get like the team that people think won't make it to Saturday. People will show up Friday night and try to catch their game. But it was pretty much full the whole time. That was interesting because again,
Mm.
it was like we were more surprised because like the audience was louder, I think, last year overall, but they really warmed up into it this year.
Sure.
Maybe there was a lot of turnover with who came this year versus last year, and again, like it really doesn't start with many people in the audience. Like there's usually every section just needs to have one guy who's just really drunk, and they're just like a really big group leader, and then they can get everybody going. And if you just don't have those guys, then you just don't get a loud arena.
Mm.
Back at Columbus in 2016, there were a couple guys like that were really bringing the energy, doing chants, going crazy, wearing all the merchandise. And Adam Apicella, then a day after, like the first day of Columbus playoffs, went up to them, gave them and like their whole family like fucking VIP tickets,
Really?
and gave them everything they needed, and then put them in front of the audience sections in the first on the floor seats,
Yeah.
and said, "Just do what you're doing," and just like basically supported them and gave them a little extra for doing that because he kind of recognized like it's not really about filling up an arena with 10,000 people who all scream. It's really just about having someone in each section that is going to get people excited because everyone's
Yeah.
capable. So, uh, yeah. So, anyways, we didn't know, didn't expect there to be a ton of people there
Mm.
on Friday, but also Immo was playing the second game, so you assume that it was just a day you had to take off work.
Sure.
Just,
It's like a
yeah,
bank holiday. Saint Mihai is playing today, so no one's going to work.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what
exactly.
it felt like a very cool event. And one of the other reasons, bar, the location, the fan base, and the cool venue and all of that, was the fact that there was some very interesting Counter Strike being played out. Now, For the few people that probably, for whatever reason, don't know what happened at Cluj, Vitality won it, second trophy of the year out of 3 tournaments that they've played. Parivision was the second place finisher, and then you had Mouse and Mongo's top 4, and then you had Falcons, Navi, Aurora, and Furia reaching playoffs, but not being able to go over the line. Now, I want us to start this one with a bit of an ease into the big conversations when it comes down to Cluj itself. Looking at the teams, main Swiss wise, as we pointed out, 9 out of the top 10 teams were present in Cluj. There was maybe a couple of lineups that you could have expected a little bit more of. That couldn't really perform. We're going to get to the people that exceeded expectations later on, but if you had to look at these teams and say, especially casting the event and looking at all the games closely, which team you were left with a sour taste in your mouth after watching throughout this event? Which team was the one that you expected a little bit more out of? Is there one that kind of sticks out?
Yeah, it would be Furia for sure
All right,
because they play against the Mongols. Like I think almost every other team for my money did exactly what you expected.
sure.
So like, like Aurora and Falcons and Mouse are not good enough to get to the grand finals. Paravision definitely did something incredible by making it to grand finals again, but they've
Mm,
already shown that this year. They just do it in an even harder tournament. But Furia have like this, it's a real stinker. They play against the Mongols. They start slow at every map. Um, they make a big comeback. It was that Dust 2 game versus the Mongols. They made an enormous
yeah,
comeback, but they still lose the series, and they started 3-9 down every single game.
yeah,
So it was and it's Cobra's era is just like lighting them up, and the story's so cool because the Mongols are playing so well despite them having a guy who they had in when they came last place at Krakow and overperformance and all of that. But it for me it was mostly a story of like, okay, Furia, like you're one of the most impressive teams from last year, maybe your top 3, and some argue even more impressive than Furia considering the roster moves you had to make and how good Molodoy is right away. But he's having another bad playoffs. The Furia team kind of looks like they're sort of receding to like an upcoming team as opposed
mm,
to a championship team, which they're supposed to be right now. So it has me concerned about them when it comes to other big events and whether or not you can believe in them. I think they unfortunately can end up in this bucket of like Mouse, where you're just
sure.
constantly disappointed because they can never do like the actual win. Now they're already beat Mouse in terms of
Mm.
picking up chips to this point, but at this event in specific, I think it was sort of uncanny how we were worried about Furia and then they disappointed in such a big way versus the Mongols.
So this is an interesting topic. I'm actually glad that you started with them because they do, in the end of the day, make it to the playoffs. But I feel like this was probably the biggest disappointment alongside the Falcons that they couldn't make it a little bit deeper than the quarterfinals. Now, with Furia, for me, this is a continuation of a story that we started seeing in Budapest in the end of 2025, right? And that was, I feel like when people were saying main disappointments for the major, not a lot of people pivoted towards Furia, but for me personally, you look at a team that was without a doubt the number one in the, let's say, 1 month leading to the major, even 1 month and a half leading to the major. They should have done better in Budapest. They crumbled under the pressure. Molodoy had an off game. A lot of things didn't work out. And now you're starting to probably see some moments of repetitiveness when it comes down to them going into playoffs and not stepping up, not even playing against Vitality, right? And that is the terrifying part, is the fact that you think about it, the Mongols had a great event, all in all. I mean, they didn't play badly against Vitality as well, pushed them into overtime. The group stage was very decent for them. They were able to take down Navi, especially. Lost the map to Bait, lost the map to Pain as well, but got a map against Vitality. So the Mongols are solid. This is not something that we're disputing. But if you're looking at Furia right now, what is different through your perspective, in your eyes, in between that team that was winning consecutive events in 2025 and that team that is now struggling to get into playoffs and go to that same level? Because I'd say half a year ago, maybe a lot of people would even say that they would rate Furia's chances to pick up the Budapest Major higher than Vitality's chances, right? But now you're probably starting to see a little bit of gaps as they've been around the tier 1 circuit for a little bit longer. So what do you make of all of that?
Yeah, they did. They got to number one on HLTV and or in VRS at the end of the last year. So they really were all that for a second.
Mm,
I think the two most important players on the team are Molodoy and Yakinder. I
sure.
think if you talk about someone like Cacerado, I didn't have him as high up on my top 20 list as other people. People were very offended by that. And my logic is essentially that Cacerado has played incredibly well his whole career. That's not actually what changed. He didn't actually become a much better player this year. All that happened was he got Yakinder and Molodoy
Mm,
and sort of proved that he could never carry the same way Rops could never like totally carry a team to be a super team or anything like that. He's not that kind of player. He's a very good lurker, very consistent player, superstar in his role probably, which is rare to say, but not like a superstar in the way that Molodoy is with the amount of impact he can have on a game. And so you have Molodoy and Yakinder are really streaky right now. Molodoy in particular in elimination games has actually just been terrible. Uh, yeah, when he played against Navi at the major, that was like, I mean, I casted that game and
yeah.
you can even just go watch that last round. He was like misses like 3 easy shots on Ivy. He's just you could tell he's just showing up for the fight, trying to pretend he has the confidence, completely whiffing, and it was so apparent that he was just completely crumbling. Um, and then he references, everyone tells him he's a young player and he's got time. It's definitely true. It's not untrue, but it's a huge problem for Furia's short term if they're going to have success. If Molodoy is getting nervous, so I think Molodoy is getting nervous. I think Yakinder, and even though Yakinder has been amazing, he was amazing in Hong Kong when they played their final against Falcons. That was the closest Falcons ever got to winning in front of a crowd. Yakinder stole it from them. He played amazing in that grand final, but he's still streaky as hell. He's still getting. He can have 3 bad maps in a row. He can, he can
Yeah.
play well versus Falcons, then play badly versus Falcons. So I think between the two of them, I'd say they're the two most important players on Furia
Sure.
right now. They have been throughout their wins, and yet they're the most inconsistent.
That's a very interesting conversation. I feel like with Yakinder is a little bit more to be expected, a little bit easier to predict, right? Because of the roles and because of the style of play. Then I think Molodoy is the very interesting conversation, which route I would rather take when it comes down to this. Because Molodoy, one of the things that I've noticed is that we tend to always forget when a rookie enters the scene and they just enter by storm. We always tend to forget that they actually have been playing Tier 1 Counter Strike for a bunch of months, right? For him, it hasn't even been a full year. And I think it was very terrifying towards the end of last year when you would just simply not find any flaws in his game, right? Because he was playing hyper aggressively. He was probably the most pleasing Oper eye test wise as a new guy coming up to watch, right? Because he's very fearless as a player. But then the downside of it, I think now we're starting to see, which for me personally makes it a lot more exciting. Because as you pointed out, and that Navi game at the major was a great example, and he's had a couple of those already. He's a very streaky Oper, but he's that type of a player. You know how a lot of the guys, this is something that Mouse, for example, preach a lot, is that no matter how good of or how bad of a game you have, you should be making the same decisions and taking the same fights and approaching situations in the same way. I think this is Molodoy's biggest nemesis because he seems to be going for the same amount of repeaks and fights and aggro plays, regardless of whether it's working or it isn't, right? Which, on one hand, you might want to respect. On the other hand, does it feel like sometimes that type of play when he gets not even nervous, but maybe nervous, and when he just has a slow start to a map, could even put his team on a bigger disadvantage than even getting the kill would put him in an advantage. Because for me, he's starting to form, at least in my head, my opinion starting to be like, okay, he's going to be the type of guy that can win you a map or lose you a map. And it depends on how the game is going to go for him. Because if he's keeps on running in first with the open, going for all of these repeaks, and he just can't hit a shot, well, you're going to be handicapped unless someone like Cacerata or Yakinder, as you pointed out, decides to have a live game, then it's very difficult for you to win.
He's that's why Donk is 1 of 1 because he takes so many of like high risk opening fights and he wins them all over the course of 2 years, which is like no one's ever done that before. So when when you compare someone like Molodoy who like bursts onto the scene, he's like the spiritually the same, but with an op in his hand. And so he's like going
Sure.
head to head with all the oppers in every game. He's taking down Zywoo. He's like, it's like, who are you? Who is this kid? And why does he not get worried about these circumstances? A lot of people would call it a confidence based play style in the same way Donk has. But with 99.9% of the time, it doesn't work over a long period of time. Now, now, does it mean that he should change? Well, I I hope not because
Yeah.
it's really fun to watch, and I also think it's you just get the confidence. If I like you look at Yakinder and he had like a huge problem with confidence. I kept saying, okay, there's no way his style doesn't work in CS2. Look at Donk, like he should be perfect for this game. So if he kind of gets back into it, I'm sure it can still work. I think there is maybe something where it comes to anti-strat where Molodoi repeaks a ton. No one else does that,
Yeah.
and repeaking is something that we've left as an entire scene. We've left that in the past because when teams started game planning better, they'd punish you for your repeaks, not your first peak. So that ended up being not sustainable overall. But Molodoi is fully aware of that. He was making it work. I'm not. I wouldn't be convinced if someone said, "Oh, it's because he repeaks that he's dying more." I think
Sure.
he's just missing more right now.
Okay.
So it's probably it compounds. Like you have a bad game, you miss more, then you repeak, you miss that shot too, or you know before I didn't have to rely on repeaking. Now you have to rely on it to get a kill. So now you're just obvious. It all goes wrong. The way Molodoi plays is like he's driving a race car really fast. And it's like with that
Right.
play style, you have to be so focused all the time. And if you don't, you crash. Whereas someone's in Queserado's role, like you have lots of breaks. And
Yeah,
you can
he's
really just
driving
take
an
your
Opel
time.
Corsa from the 2000s. Even if he pushes down
Yeah.
to the pedal, it could go to what, 80 miles per hour tops. No,
Yeah. And I think, yeah, it's good.
yeah, I find it interesting then if you're having that conversation, that type of thoughts, because I like the description of what Molodoi is doing. Is that just simply a matter for you of him not having enough experience in the on tier one, or is that something that he will have to work on directly and redefine and change? Does it really need changing? Is where I'm going with this, or does it need
Yeah. Yeah.
perfecting?
I would argue like I would guess, not I would argue. I
Yeah,
would guess he has everything's fine. I think the one thing that's now a problem is he's just become self-aware of the importance of his tournaments, of his place in the history of the game, of like his fandom and how much everyone expects from him. I think that suddenly just all hit him like a truck. And there's something that happens where like there's actually an age that's so young almost that you don't even you're unaware of those circumstances. Moldo is not like he's not 16, he's like 20, right? I think he's 20 or 21.
yeah,
So he's still young. He's not like that young, but I think it's kind of all started to become way more real now. Like I think he's a lot of this mental stuff is it's just a matter of I would say it's a matter of luck. Some people are built in a way it just never affects them. Some people get hit like a truck, never recover. Some people just need to go through a certain thought process and work through it, and then they figure out how to be a champion without doubting themselves. They try to play their best game without thinking of it as risky or not risky.
mm,
Those skills I think some people get naturally. They're the skills that like if you look at Falcons like choking has become totally contagious on that team. And I think it
sure,
starts with like maybe it starts with Nico. Mondesi's getting a little bit. Kyosuke's not even playing well in playoffs. I think that you start to hear it in the comms in the team. Maybe that passes on from someone. You start thinking a little bit too much in moments you didn't think before at all. And now you need a mental coach. You need the guy to tell you the right series of thoughts to make you snap out of it and get back to where you were at. But I think his journey is not one of more deathmatch, more prep, more anything like that. I think he kind of had that nailed. And I
yeah.
think we proved that with tournament runs. I think now he's just got this new problem of like anxiety, essentially, just being way too aware of like the gravity of all these big plays and his play style. So now he's just like constantly crashing the car and really, getting worried about the next time he crashes and everything
Mm.
like that.
It kind of feels like we live in an era where I'm not sure if ever in the last how many years I can remember a time when so many teams that have the potential to lift trophies have actually been stopped by being chokers in playoffs. I'm
Mm.
trying to think because there's always been one or two, right? But now suddenly you have Furia, suddenly you have Falcons, suddenly you have Mouse, suddenly you have basically all the great teams bar Vitality just not being able to go through that mental threshold. And I guess the Furia conversation and the way that you picture it with anxiety really nicely leads into the Falcons and what we make of their performance at Cluj, because I think at a certain point, you're probably, if you are the Falcons, you're gonna start getting sick and tired of feeling like you can win these events and always not winning them because of some silly Dust 2 game that you're unable to close on the T side because you're getting farmed by Zwei. That happens too much, and it doesn't really matter what team he's on. He's always doing it. But that was going to be my pick for a disappointing team. And don't get me wrong, I would really want to go on the tier 2 tangent and say that I'm pissed at what's going on with 3D Max. FaZe, I'm not even, I'm not even going to mention that right now. But
Mhm.
teams like G2, for example, I expected a little bit more of, maybe, especially with that Navi game. But Falcons, I think I was disappointed in the end of the event simply because of how good the group stage was and how big the difference was the moment that they make it into the quarterfinals. This is, and again, I'm going to make the correlation with the major. This is the second time I've seen the Falcons play a quarterfinal when in the span of 3 months against a team that they probably should beat, where I've watched the game and I couldn't tell you exactly what the hell happened. How did they lose this game? Because they were in the position to win it so many times. It was the same against Spirit, by the way, even though they lost in Budapest 0-2. That does too, they had a, 11-4, 11-5 lead or whatever, and they just couldn't close it. And then they made Zwei look like a god on the B-bomb side. And he was not in his cool era where he's playing well for Paravision and he's feeling himself. He was basically the bitch on the side of Spirit, and he was not really smiling at all during games, and they still fed him. But for the Falcons, they take down 3D Max 2-0. Obviously, 3D Max is in shambles, so probably should be the case with that game. They drop a map against FaZe, but they still win. And then the moment that they beat Furia 2-1, considering the only map that they lost was in overtime, and they could have easily won that as well. And that was the one where, there was a little bit of craziness coming out of Molodoy, who dropped the 25 and 13 on them in a bunch of very nice plays. Then they destroyed him on Inferno, and then Anubis, they get 6 rounds on CT side, and the T side, even though it's 13-11, they play well. So I was very hopeful. I thought Falcons was the one team that could challenge Vitality for this event, probably. And then the game against Paravision comes through. They choke Dust2 again. Then they win Mirage seemingly very easily. Looked very comfortable. So I'm thinking, well, now this is going to work out. And then Enshin comes through, and suddenly Kixon is your top fragger on Enshin. I don't want to start it with being too pessimistic, because I've always believed that the Falcons are playing better and better Counter-Strike. But if we were to try and figure out what the hell is wrong with these guys in a little bit more detail, where should we start? What is going on there?
Well, I'll say first of all, the only reason I wasn't more disappointed by the Falcons is because they've been really consistent.
Sure.
Like they consistently having the same exits, right? I
Right.
mean, it's like, I mean, genuinely, it's
Yeah.
like Furia actually in the last couple of tournaments. Now with this one, when Furia do this again, you're not going to be as surprised. Some people, it might take them a little longer to sort of be like, oh, this is disappointing. For me, that kind of starts now. I'll be disappointed on the next one for Furia. I thought this was like the chance for them to prove Major didn't really matter. First start to the year didn't really matter.
Yeah.
We're actually not, Maldo is not nervous. We're going to be back. So right now, this is why it was disappointing for Falcons. I knew they were going to choke.
Sure.
I
Sure.
absolutely believed it. I am no longer disappointed.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm such a huge fan of m0NESY and his story, and Nico as well, like getting a major, everything like that. But now it's like it is so far gone for me. Like I don't believe that they've actually fixed anything. I think the cool part about it actually is that the fact that a team like Paravision for them and a team like Mongols to play against Furia, they're kind of the exact right competition,
Sure.
because they show you that like you can put all your skill points into like picking up the right players and playing good CS. All these teams play great CS, but who can do it as champions, who believe they'll actually win? Paravision, they're going to do it like champions. Like they've destroyed dreams consistently. They destroyed Foot streams right before playoffs took place. Crushed them as a nervous new team, even though they were good enough to beat Paravision. Same with the Falcons. They did it to Saw at that RMR. They do it to everybody, essentially. You play
Sure.
against Jame, you can beat them if you're better than them, but you will never beat them if you're nervous at all. That is the number one thing.
Mm.
So, a huge skill check when it comes to this intangible, important factor in Counter Strike, which is like mental strength. And we see teams like Vitality have amazing mental strength, Paravision have amazing mental strength. You know, I'm kind of undecided when it comes to Mouse. Like even though they're consistently third, fourth place, I'm not sure if they choke. I don't know if I would call it that. They kind of just get outskilled a little bit.
It just feels like something is lacking there. It doesn't. I
Yeah,
think maybe at the start you could say it's choke, but then they were able to win against some of these teams, like some of the teams
yeah.
that they usually lose to, and yeah,
I
it's
think right
probably
now,
pure firepower maybe because it's not tactical depth. Tactical depth wise, they play some of the cleanest Counter Strike there is. But
yeah.
yeah,
So
probably
it's
firepower.
probably something like that. I haven't seen the huge, like they're actually one of the teams that made one of the massive comebacks at Cluj.
Sure.
Like they made like a 3-12 comeback on Overpass, like Mouse did. So
Yeah.
they're still upper echelon for me. But with Falcons, like it's so blatantly, obviously
Mm.
mental. It's so blatantly, obviously mental. And I think they fired Lars. I think they don't have a mental coach right now. They need to crack that code. They always have been.
Sure.
You go to their profile. Team with Nico, Monesi, Kioske. They have a PGL Bucharest in front of a studio. It's their only trophy they've won. I mean, they've been top five the entire time.
And
They've
that.
got more second place finishes
Yeah.
than Mao's do. You know, like
Yeah.
they absolutely should have a cabinet already. It has nothing to do with how good they are.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, by the way. And last 6 months, you're looking at this team. By the way, just to add to that, no, PGL Bucharest wasn't even with Monesi on the lineup, right? That was with Dexter. That was his parting gift when he got the MVP. So that's even more mental. It's without Kyosuke and without Monesi, that only
Mm.
trophy that they've won. And then you've got a second place finish at EPL 22. You've got a second place finish at Blast Rivals. You've got a second place finish at Blast Season 1 finals, the Blast Bounty finals this year, and everything else is third place, fourth place, playoffs. They almost all the time make playoffs. Even all the time they make playoffs. But it's about the things that for me with Falcons, I would say the issue is straight up mental because I refuse to believe that these players don't know how to. And we're all seeing the circulation of screenshots of 5v3s and 4v2s that they're losing every single time. It's not like these guys can't play these situations, guys. They know how to. If you, the random guy that is 2.4, and don't take that as an insult because I'm in the same group of Face It Elo, right? I'm not up there with the 4K Elo guys, but if you are just an average guy that's level 10 on Face It and are like 2.5K Elo or lower or higher or whatever, and you know how they should be playing in that post plan, believe me, they do as well. They know. But it's just the fact that sometimes Counter Strike just doesn't make sense in these moments, right? And people are just gonna make rush decisions. You're gonna decide, hey, I want to switch my position in the last second, or a teammate is gonna call something for you that is different to the initial idea that you had, and then you miss out on a timing with 1 millisecond, and that leaves you exposed, and you die, and that just starts a lot of chaos around it. So I feel like at this point they've just lost so many of these situations that this should be some issue when it comes down to chaotic communication. I couldn't believe that it's anything else, and maybe it's kind of like a mental barrier that the players themselves just know that in these situations they're very volatile, right? Because you've lost them so many times that you probably have that to the back of your mind of I am in a 5v3. I have all my 5 guys on the B bomb side on Inferno. We have Banana Control. We have Deep Church. We have Smokes to replenish CT. But we still believe that we can lose this round. If you still believe you can lose this round in that type of a circumstance, then you have a big issue mentally. And I feel like that should be it. Now, they are
Yeah.
trying to make changes, as you pointed out. They remove their mental coach or psychologist or whatever, and they changed their assistant coach as well, like 1 or 2 months ago. That was a move that I didn't actually like, but they are trying to change things. If it is up to you, what do you address on that team? How do you fix that short term? Surely you don't make another roster change, right?
No, like I just don't want to see Tess get scapegoated for like mental health issues. It
Right.
doesn't. It just like I'm just. It's actually. It's
Welcome to the
like it
ex
like
heroic club.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really have a suspicion that this is just it's largely Nico and it's trickled down because not to pick on anybody, but if you look at the careers of all these players, like Mondesi didn't have this problem. Even playing alongside Nico on G2, to be fair, they did close out a lot of big events. But Nico's history is spotty all the way back to phase days. Is Boston screenshot, the Stockholm one. I mean, the exit at Paris in the
Yeah,
trying to qualify to playoffs versus Fnatic on Vertigo. So, and I think that someone Kioske, for example, is then maybe he's a nervous guy too, and maybe it would have happened on any other team. But I think that it's likely that it's a systemic problem. It, like you said, it probably comes within the comms where someone overcoms a little bit. They doubt themselves out loud. You start to trip over your own shoelaces. You're losing positions you can't
sure,
lose. And I think it actually starts with this like one thought. Like the one thought is that if you like you said, if you believe in yourself, then it's quite simple. Like you can start thinking about how to win. But if you actually don't believe in yourself, then you will literally start thinking about how to lose. And I think they actually take a 99 to 1% situation and then they find a way to make that 1% possible because
sure.
their mindset is literally more afraid to win or so scared of losing or thinking of every way that they could possibly lose that they actually can only think of ways to lose and then they start doing things that go in that direction.
Sure.
It's quite lit. Like we've seen more than a couple of those screenshots. If they had taken their hands off of their key peripherals, they would have won. That would have won on time,
Yeah.
right? So I can't even think about it any other way. It's really not my favorite way to talk about the game because we don't get to hear all the comms. We don't get to prove, who's really the problem in this
Yeah.
way. It feels like one of the most embarrassing ways to be talked about as a player, to be like, it's your mental that you're so weak in. But we've seen also when players overcome it, it's some of the best stories, like when Kerrigan at Antwerp in 2022 did it versus Simple, like, did it versus Navi in that grand finals. Like, that was such a special moment in his career. But that fight never ends, man. Like Kerrigan goes on to choke Shanghai. He goes on to make every grand final in
Mm.
the major in CS2, not win them. Like it does not end just because you even win once. All we can hope is that Nico just gets that win out of the way so we can move on to new stories. But it's
I guess it's a story that's older than time itself. By the way, I actually find it quite interesting that I am still bothered to talk about it because it's been the same thing that everyone's been talking about since 2018, probably, and
yeah.
and it's now 2026, and we're still in the era where we're trying to figure out why does Nico's team look phenomenal, but whenever push comes to shove, they just fumble the bag every single time. It's just crazy, but
They could
I
get Kerrigan as soon as he retires. They can hire
yeah
his wife because his wife, who's a sports psychologist,
yeah.
probably did a great job with Kerrigan because he actually overcame at Antwerp and figured it out himself.
Mm.
So I think this will be a moment where for each team that's going through this, whether it's Furia or if it's Falcons, that hiring the right mental coach, just there needs to be like a mental coach revolution. Like that was actually in the Astralis days. I can't remember her name, but she got
Yeah.
so much credit for helping them transition from Kerrigan to Glaive to winning
Mm.
everything. They credited her so much. I don't hear any mental coaches getting tons of credit these days
Yeah.
for any team.
I think Vitality is probably the one exception, right?
Oh,
Yeah. They give a lot of credit to their mental coach, and one thing that I've noticed is that he's basically everywhere with the team, right? Even if you're looking at things like the HOTV awards or whatever, he's always there, right? So he's kind of like part of the team. With a lot of the others, I don't recall seeing a similar vibe, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was just a person that I didn't recognize that was somewhere nearby the team, and he's their sports psychologist or she, or yeah, you get the point. But I agree with you. I feel like they definitely are putting the efforts when it comes down to it. But for me, at least from the outside, it's probably the easiest thing to say when this is the best team in the world and one of the best teams in history. But I think with Vitality, I've noticed the presence of the sports psychologist or mental coach with the team quite a lot, which definitely helps to some extent. But yeah, interesting times for the Falcons. There is a whole bunch of ways that you could go even deeper into that topic if we start talking about Mondesi's individual performance and the way he's been volatile, even though Nico's been playing well. Kioske not being able to find himself in playoffs. But I suggest we move into a very interesting conversation, which is going to be the final thing that we say about Cluj, and then we're gonna have a couple brief words about the VRS and how things are looking for the Cologne Major, or leading to the Cologne Major. I'm just gonna shoot straight, Launders. You were one of the people in the room when I made one of the most outrageous statements I've ever made in my career as a Counter Strike pundit, I guess. Which was if Vitality were to win the Budapest Major, they are the greatest team ever. And then there was a
Hmm.
full room of people that were just staring at me, being like, "What the hell did you just say?" Now a couple months later, I was still wrong because winning the Budapest Major didn't mean a thing. But a couple months later, I feel a lot more comfortable saying that you could have a genuine conversation about Vitality being the greatest team in the history of the game. What is your take on that? Is Vitality already competing with Astralis for that title? If so, are they ahead? Are they behind them? Is there other teams like Fnatic, like Navi from 1.6 that you think have done more? Where do you place Vitality in that sense?
I'll leave that to any of the 1.6 and past stuff. I'll leave to Duncan because I can
Sure.
talk about it looking at numbers and stuff, but not being there is a little bit different.
So
And
yesterday he
you know,
confirmed. Actually, that's one of the reasons I included that, because I didn't include that initially as well. Yesterday he confirmed on a show in front of me that he thinks Vitality is greater. So, but for the
okay,
sake of credibility, we can focus just on CS:GO and CS2 eras.
okay. Well, so I was there for all the years of Astralis, and I think sometimes we forget like just how long it was. I think that
Mm,
people look at it as 2018. That was just their most impressive year. That was the year that if you go one for one and you want to measure up overall accomplishments over a long period of time, that's the peak of their era. That matches up to Vitality's 2025.
sure.
But the raw numbers, I think they still had one more tournament win or
They had
something.
they had 10 tournaments. They played
Right,
so
10
they
to
they
9.
played
It was
17 tournaments. Vitality played 16 in 2025, and then the number of maps was a little bit higher for Astralis. Oh no, I'm not sure actually, but they
yeah.
played a little bit more online Counter Strike, and there was that cherry picking with we're gonna go to Blast, but some other teams are not gonna go to Blast, but whatever. But yeah, that's the year
So,
where they get 10 trophies.
and this is also, if Heavy God didn't exist, man, it'd be easy. Vitality had the best year, but he won that Blast London event, and
Uh,
that would have been the one to tie it up
mm,
officially. But like the number of events, it doesn't really matter. It feels like that much to the way people feel when you look at how strong they are, how other teams feel about Vitality, how good the team is on paper. Like, what can you even improve on this lineup?
sure.
I'll say the one thing that's maybe the most impressive is Astralis having all 5 of their players in the top 15. Glaive was number 8 in 2018 as an entry, as an IGL, which was actually incredible looking back. But even in 2017, that's when they won their first major. They spent like 5 months of that year at number 1 as well.
Sure.
So, you compare that to Vitality's 2024. Astralis were more dominant in that year than Vitality were in 2024. Then you go forward, which is the year we're in now, and Astralis have 2019. Liquid fit a Grand Slam in there basically by playing Astralis a single time. But as soon as the Berlin major rolls around, they immediately lose to Astralis, and then Astralis also win the major, and then Astralis become the number 1 team in the world again until the end of the year. And then the next year in 2020, some people forget this, but Astralis were the HLTV Team of the Year in 2020 as well. Even
Yeah.
that was a lot of bullshit with multiple players in the roster, between Bubsky and Yugi and all this random shit, but they still managed to be the number 1 player in 2020. Just for the sake of argument, that's 4 years of like pretty unbelievable amount of time in number 1 just straight off the bat.
Sure.
On top of the peak year, on top of the amazing record of having all your players in the top 15, on top of 3 majors, sorry, on top of 4 majors, which is also
Mm.
one more overall. And when we compare 2018 to last year, you look at the team list, and the team list for Vitality is just way tougher. I mean,
Yeah.
I have to say, like, you're talking about like the top 10 this year and for the last year has just been an unreal. Like, it's like capped off with like FaZe or G2
Mm.
or the Mongols desperately like working as hard as they possibly can. And also all of those teams, by the way, consistent playoffs threats. Like, but um, when Astralis in 2018 are playing and you look at the top 10, you're going all the way down to teams like North. There is no team like North in top 10 today, you know?
Yeah, I mean, 3D
Um,
Max started
yeah.
the year in top 10. Now they're not in top 10 anymore.
I
But
think I think 3D Max genuinely more impressive than North, you know,
hey,
like
man, I
actually
was an
good team.
MSL enjoyer. I do like 3D Max as well, though. There's
Okay.
something about
Well, they
that.
did take it. They
Yeah,
took one win off them. They took three Master Stockholm
yeah.
and actually picked up a
No,
victory.
it was
So,
Masters Malmö, no?
uh,
It
Malmo,
was
yeah, maybe it was Malmo where
okay. Yeah,
MSL off or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, it
Inferno Banana
totally could
Opera
have been
against Oscar and Simple. I still remember that, man. That was the golden
right.
times. But yeah,
So, yeah,
it feels like Vitality have a little bit of a tougher competition with these teams, right?
yeah. The only thing is that the top five or so, like when
Okay,
you talk about Astralis, to top five, this was
Liquid,
Cloud9 make the Cloud9 when Cloud9 make the run and Boston,
sure.
they have to beat the top five teams all on the same side. It was like SK,
Yeah.
FaZe, um, Astralis,
Mm,
and who was on that side of the bracket? It was that would have been what, February, January, February. Navi, they're
okay.
all like all in playoff. Like the playoff, like the top end was like the peak of the phase era, the tail end of the SK era, the Cloud9, who were actually a top five team the entire year and won a major. And then you have teams like Navi with Simple having his best year in history. So there are really high peaks. You also have like
Sure.
the French era G2. They make a roster
Yeah.
move halfway through the year. Shocks Kenny S, MBK, Apex Body. It's a very strong French
Mm,
team on paper. So there were really, really top heavy threats. That's the one big argument in favor of Astralis.
sure. I think the interesting thing for me at least with Vitality is more of a, do we want to look at this comparison from a perspective of accolades and who had to play the tougher opposition, or we want to look at the quality, the pure quality of Counter Strike, considering how tough your opposition is, right? Because if we're going that route, I guess you could say Astralis had to play whoever was against them. Vitality have to play whoever is against them. The one difference that I see, which is a big difference between the trophies, is that with Astralis, they didn't have to constantly beat the top 5 teams in order to lift their trophies, right? Because some of the events that they would play, some of their top contenders wouldn't attend. With Vitality, this is legitimately the first time they win a tier 1 event where Team Spirit, for example, decides to just skip it, right? Because
Hmm.
last year, they were, even when they were winning, they were just playing all the big events, all the big events. Every single time you're either beating a Mouse or a Spirit or a Falcons or a Furia or someone like this to lift the trophy, right? Or at least to get them in the quarterfinals or the semifinals. With Astralis, there was a couple of occasions in which, let's say, as you pointed out, Liquid, when they had the Grand Slam, they played it once. There was a couple of moments where they would win trophies, but they wouldn't have to play against their direct competitor,
That's
their direct number 1 competitor.
Sure. I'll just say on the liquid front, that was a matter of luck a little bit
Sure.
because sometimes they just didn't run into each other. But also, whenever they did play, Astralis still had like an unbelievable record versus Liquid.
Right.
So it was more of a factor of like somehow Liquid got a ton of shine in
Mm.
2019. But like, let's not shroud the fact that Astralis still won Berlin. They still end up number one again. And as soon as they do face Liquid at Berlin, they end up
Mm.
winning that too. So like they proved in every one of their head-to-heads at some point or another they were the best.
Sure.
They crushed crushed Fallen in every final. They crushed Navi in every final. They beat Navi in the Face at London final. You know, and then you look at Vitality, and yeah, like VRS are bringing a lot of teams to them, but they do have some of the like easier major runs. It's not to take credit away from them because they don't pick their opponent, but they do play against Mongols in Austin. They do play
Sure.
against Gamer Legion in Paris. They do play against FaZe, who are actually like
Mm.
complete dog in the final at Budapest. So
It's very interesting, by the way, because I think with Vitality, they're not actually getting those runs when they're playing the other events, right? When they're playing the other prestige events throughout the years. But
it's
then
true.
when the major comes through, they just get the rookies, which to some extent, it actually has happened to Astralis as well. When they got to play a major final against Ents, and they got to
And
play a
yeah,
major final against the Vanguard as well. When you think
Amagar, yeah.
about it, yeah. So there is something funky about the majors, man. When there's a very dominant the side that is much better than everybody else, they never get the derby in the final. They just get a random team that's happy to be there, right? Even though Vitality had to play FaZe in Budapest, I think FaZe was just a random team that was happy to be there under these
Yeah.
circumstances.
Atlanta would be the exception
Yeah,
because
yeah. VP.
Virtus Pro, well, Poland still thinks about that one. That
Yeah.
was they were fucking really good. They were in the lead. They basically no reason that Astralis should have been able to beat them. That was a tough. That was the
Sure.
best. That's probably the best of any of the majors between the two teams in terms of how good the final was and how. But yeah, like you said, it's a lot of random chance what kind of draw you get to get there.
Yeah. But in the end of the day, if we are to say so, there is no right answer here, and that's why I'm excited. By the way, this is why I don't sound like a lunatic anymore when I say that I can see Vitality envisioned and being better than Astralis, because I think now with Vitality proving that 2025 was just not everything and they still have more to give, and I'd even say in certain aspects they've improved, by the way, in comparison to last year. You're looking at the utility usage, you're looking at the way that preparation is being done and how they can just win a game based off of utility and anti, which is so obvious to spot. They're just not letting the other team play, and there was a whole lot of examples against Jame and Parivision in that grand final, which is usually a team that is praised for being very good tactically. So if you're able to make them feel useless tactically, then you must be doing something right, which could add to that conversation of what is Xtaz doing. So if they are the best tactical team out there, then the coach maybe should be a little bit involved in all of that. But I think they have improved a little bit. And the fact that they have already picked up 2 trophies this year, at least for me, that means that Vitality is still, without a doubt, the toughest team to take down. And you're talking about the mental issues. I feel like they are the hardest team to beat down. And we got a
Yeah.
very, very good example of it on Inferno against Parivision. They're down 11-5. They lose a whole bunch of very weird rounds, a lot of clutches, and then something just happens. Something just clicks. Flame starts going crazy. Apex starts bombarding Parivision with
Zywoo
utility.
1v2.
The
Yeah.
zywoo 1v2, which definitely, if it happens to you on a Faceit book, you're going to be 100% convinced that this guy is using trigger bot and he just
Yeah.
turn around and insta headshot you, but he's able to make it work on a stage in front of a bunch of thousands of people and just, look unbothered with it. Vitality is just a very, very difficult team to take down, which kind of reminds of Astralis, right? That were very bendy in that sense, where they wouldn't necessarily crush you every single time, but they'd be very difficult to take down in a game of Counter-Strike. You mentioned the Berlin Major. I think one of the greatest examples was that series that they played against NRG there, because at the time, NRG was probably their #1 contender for the
Mhm.
major, and they even beat them in the group stage, but then they lost in the semifinals. So with all of this in mind, for you, are you placing Vitality #2, #3, or #1 right now? If you had to say, are they a greater team than Astralis, than Fnatic, than early days NIP? Where do they stand after all of the arguments that we threw out
Yeah.
there? What is the verdict?
Um, I think if there's like a difference between what I think will happen and what might be true right now.
Sure.
So I really believe in Apex,
Okay.
and I think the only thing that holds a team that is this stacked out of an even longer era is going to be like how much are they here to put in the work? I think Apex is here to put in the work, and with the level of talent on this roster, you're going to get free consistency. Like no one,
Mm,
the only 2 players who can really disappear because they're not true superstars are like Flamesy and Mezzy. But even Flamesy keeps getting better every year. It's like, but like true superstars like Rops and Zywoo are
mm,
going to give you so much, clearly, so much top 5 consistency for as long as you put in work. I think right now I see Vitality being the best team in the world when all is said and done, um, uh, throughout history. As it stands today, because of the amount of time that I feel like has gone underappreciated for how long Astralis were actually #1 and how many how many months literally that they were number one out of 4 years
Sure.
compared to Vitality. They still have to be number one. And if you compare, and then if if it was just longevity, it wouldn't matter. But if you compare that 2018 to Vitality's last year, it's debatable. It's
Mm,
that close. So if it's just that 1 year, plus the fact that Astralis were there for 4, I think for me they're still number one. But if it, the longevity is not everything. If
sure.
Vitality have back-to-back years like they just did, well, Astralis never really did that. Like
Mm,
if they somehow win another 8 tournaments this year or something like that, then like I think it's going to be impossible to argue against them.
yeah.
So yeah.
It is a beautiful conversation to be had. It's one that excites me a lot, right? Because you're just watching every single other event and you're asking yourself, okay, how much more perfect can this Counter Strike be, and how do you compare that to what Astralis were doing? Because one of them, the way that I would love to imagine this and the way that I picture it in my head is one of these two teams was a team that revolutionized how Counter Strike is being played, and the other one is one that perfected that revolution started by the first, right? And
Hmm.
I feel like Vitality are just playing the closest things to perfect Counter Strike that we've seen ever. When I watch the team, it's just sometimes I just start laughing out of nowhere. It's like I'm losing my mind. It's like the Joker movie, you know? You're just watching it and you're like, it's unfair. It's just unfair. What is the other team supposed to do? And it's basically
Yeah.
what probably a lot of people felt when they were watching Astralis, but then with Vitality, it feels like there's even more firepower. So it is absolutely crazy, and it's something that we're gonna keep on taking
I,
a look at.
I will say I actually think there was more hopelessness when
Yeah.
Astralis were playing.
Okay.
I think that the feeling of hopelessness that you're talking about when you're watching your favorite team go up against them, I feel like, ironically, because today more teams are better,
Mm.
that like you can have them challenged, you can have them actually exit in semis. Like if it wasn't for the like Budapest into the first 2 tournaments of this year, people were actually starting to doubt Vitality a
Yeah.
little bit. They
Yeah.
thought the run was kind of done. So it's like in terms of how that felt for a second, they actually were, they were beaten in September. They were beatable in the fall and late summer, even though they were still playoffs and semis and everything like that.
Sure.
I'm not sure how much of that matters, but in terms of the feeling of hopelessness and the other thing is boredom. People hate these eras because they're
Yeah.
so bored. They're here to watch for a few months. They want to see some parody. They want some underdog stories. Sorry, it's not happening. Not happening right now, Timmy. Come back in a bit. You're gonna have some fun. There'll be a new team that becomes great, but for now, we're in the middle of like this thing that's happening. You're not stopping it.
Mm.
But in terms of hopelessness, I would say, there were more matches, more grand finals that Astralis went into where I actually thought there was a 0% chance they would lose. Whereas for Vitality, I could see them losing
Mm.
potentially more often because of how good teams like the Falcons,
Sure.
Furia, even Mouse. They all gave them extremely hard runs in grand finals, and I could see them. Mongols took the first map in Austin. They lost the first map in every single one of their finals, I think. No, sorry, besides Gamer Legion.
Yeah.
Their other two major grand finals, they lost the first map. So not necessarily more beatable, but they've definitely been challenged. It's definitely been close. So the hopelessness, I think Astralis actually still wins. That was some of the
Sure.
most depressing. I think Vitality are more fun to watch than Astralis
Oh,
were.
they are. Yeah.
And yeah, and so when Astralis were as dominant as they were, and yet also just a punish game was perfect, but they were still Danish. They weren't hyper aggressive. They didn't have anyone like Flamesy even on the team necessarily. Like Magisk would pop off and everything, but like Device was kind of a slow paced offer. Like Zai was even more fun to watch
I mean,
overall. He's like kind of
man.
he's like Device, but
Yeah.
positionally, but he's faster. He's like CS2 is also a lot more fun to watch. So
Zywoo was
yeah,
very fun. I'll just
yeah,
say I can't think of a lot of opers that T-side Inferno are just going to be playing banana entry for their team with an AK. He's
yeah.
he's a
Zai would
very
pick.
fun player. He's a very
Yeah.
fun player. I'm past the part of even comparing. Well, to some extent, this is a good comparison to Device, but I think he's wild. I think he's a little bit wild.
Yeah, yeah. I think I think with Zywoo, it's like these past 2 tournaments have he's shown an entirely new level.
Sure.
Some scarily somehow he's
Yeah.
gotten even better. Like he's gone from people were upset with me for criticizing like his X factor overall. So something that's just
Yeah.
always thought about during his career. But when we watch Krakow and then Cluj, he's literally done. all of the things that made him great in the last 7 years,
Sure.
and now also turned up the aggression
Mm.
and kind of like I can see him going for that undeniability, in
Yeah.
this year. So right, like the craziest part is like there's no number two player right now because Donk wasn't at Cluj. Like he's just got the lead by a huge margin right now.
No,
So
it's very funny because last year he was definitely, undoubtedly, part of the one of the most successful years in the history of the game. He got two major MVPs. He was one of the highest rated players. He got the number one, and there was a lot of people disputing that it should have been Dunk, and he probably was better.
yeah,
And then suddenly at the start of this year, zywoo does look like the best player in the world, right? Obviously, there's the team factor again, but now I agree with you that in terms of the X factor, it looks a lot more reliable now because he was the guy to oftentimes go missing in grand finals in some important moments. It was actually a lot of times where guys like Messi or Robs or Flames would step it up in grand finals for Vitality. Now it's zywoo. Now he's the star and he's just dominating, which is great to see. Bar the fact that Flames he has played two out of the three best LAN events in his career in top 20, top 30 Counter Strike since the start of this year in three events.
hmm
Um, but yeah, with that being said, I think we can conclude that you're more on the Astralis is still the more logical one, but you're open to change your opinion in some time if
yeah.
things
If
keep
I had to
on.
make a prediction in like
Yeah,
8 months, I'd probably say Vitality.
sure.
I can see them, yeah, being the best ever.
All right, all right. I am deciding to be ignorant, and I'll just say I like it more watching Vitality. So for me, they're already better. That's that
Sure.
that
Yeah.
that's the route that I've decided. Also, because I was a North fan back in the days, and I hated Astralis with my guts. So yeah, Vitality it is. For the last couple of minutes, we're not gonna spend too much time doing this, but um, there has been a new Finn tweet, and Finn is, for those of you wondering, Mischief on Twitter. He is the guy that's blessing us with spending a couple of hours doing those Excel sheets with the percentages of each team's chance of making the major. A bunch of time before the cutoff comes in, so we can start planning things and seeing which teams could make it to the major, which teams are not going to make it. Last year there was or well, yeah, it is last year now, but for the last major there was a lot of crazy storylines with teams like Fnatic and NAP and Soul fighting for the last spots up until the very end, barely being able to squeeze in with 0 point whatever percent chance a couple months prior. Well, Fnatic will have to do it again because they have a 5.4% chance to do it
Hmm.
right now, Mo. But we've got that conversation. I want to direct towards the teams that are either in with around 50 or more percent, but they're not the solid tier one guys, and the people that are below the line. So I'm gonna read them out to you. I'll even send you the tweet so you can have a look, and
Okay.
then we are going to give a couple words on some of the teams that are in that we might be concerned that could drop out, and some of the teams that you think might actually make it into the zone because there has been some changes. Now, bar the I guess obvious ones: Vitality, Parivision, Falcons, Mouse, Spirit, Aurora, Navi, G2, Astralis. These are the teams that have above 90% chance to be in Cologne. They probably will be, right? And even teams like Gamer Legion, Foot, and Face at this point should be pretty much set in stone, right? With 80+%. Then we enter a very interesting group of, let's say, 5 teams, and this is just the European VRS. We enter an interesting group of teams, which is Monty, Gentlemates, Bedboom, 3D Max, and Hotu that are currently going to Cologne. And
hmm
then you've got right below the line, you've got Heroic, NIP, Bait, Liquid, Big, BC Game, Illwell, Sinners, Alliance, Fnatic, K27, and then a lot of other teams. So taking a look at this one, anyone out of the teams below phase that you're seeing that you're hoping will be able to make it to the major and that you're actually excited about, and anyone that you're concerned about? What are you thinking there?
Liquid will not make the major, so
Sure.
we'll just start with that.
Okay.
They will completely crumble. I think Bait absolutely can take a spot.
Mm,
Uh, they could be like I don't know if this is all hope, but I would assume that 3D Max have enough enough reps right now that they'll win the important games, but you never know. They just cut body. Not even sure about that one.
It is an
Uh,
interesting change, by the way, because they do remove their most aggressive player to add another anchor guy that got benched from Vitality for not taking enough initiative years ago.
that's right. And he was, yeah, it's like he wasn't even really meant to be an anchor when he played on Vitality. They just
Mm,
needed to fill a role. And he was very disappointing. Like, well, I used to joke that if you threw a flashbang in Masuda, he was cooked. But if you didn't flash him, he'd get 3 kills.
sure.
Um, he's it's been a long time though, so like I haven't really followed him, and I'm sure he's a lot better and more versatile. Could be a cool move. Maybe it's like there's way, you know. I high hopes for them. High hopes for Heroic. I think it was really crazy that NIP lost 100 Thieves.
Mm,
Um, that was actually nuts. I thought, and otherwise I would have thought. And ninjas are capable of playing like total tier one CS and beating a lot of top teams, teams in top 10. They just like at the major we saw mentally they totally crumbled, which is a problem. But they made it
sure.
to the major, so I'm less concerned about that. So I see Bait, Ninjas, and uh, and 3D Max going up.
Mm,
And if there's any team that has a chance of like not making it, that's really high up, I would say it's possible Astralis blow their lead. It's possible that
ooh,
yeah, I think so.
okay.
I actually think they're quite good. Don't get me wrong,
Sure.
but I don't know if I would if I just looked at this list of top teams, put them at 93% chance
Mm,
in terms of who they're going. Like a team like Foot, I think is just way better right now. Like
mm.
so, yeah.
All right. I was wondering because there's a bunch of I think a lot of people have already given up on the idea that BC Game is going to make it to the major. It's going to be very difficult for them to have a breakthrough, even though a lot of people love the story. Fnatic's in a very tough spot. Big went through a whole lot of changes, and they still have a chance realistically. Teams like Ilwo and Sinners are the pleasant surprises of Tier 2 European Counter Strike this season,
Hmm,
but it's going to
okay.
be a stretch for them to be able to make it. You did briefly mention Liquid. Are we
Yeah.
ignoring how big of a deal it is that Liquid might not make a major? Uh,
Yeah, right. That
why is that happening? What is going on with Liquid?
they've got like I actually have no. I wish I knew.
Yeah,
They just have absolutely no constitution at all. Like
sure,
they're like the worst team for per talent of any team on this list. Like for how many good players they have that are
sure.
still near their primes or good enough to play well, they are severely underperforming to a degree that you cannot explain. It makes perfect sense when you see Yakinder leave the team and gets back to his form. Right, like everything goes well for the players. Like your time on Liquid does not count right now.
They're kind of
Um,
like the Manchester United of Counter Strike. By the way, I'm not sure how much you are into Man United history, but that was a stigma for many years that good players would go
mm,
there, they would be terrible, and then they would leave, go to another club, and then they'd start playing very well. That's
of my
kind of what
vague
you're
football
feeling, maybe.
knowledge, I think I know what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and they're also this like very popular team.
Mm.
So I don't know if that ties into it, the amount of attention they get, but
Yeah.
like it's one of those like Falcons things. Like it's not even choking. I don't think it's literally like self belief. It's or it's
Sure.
just like totally mental. I don't look at player quality like that and go like they stand no chance. I'm of the mind that Liquid, even in their Cadian iteration, had a very good chance of making an incredibly strong team. They built a
Mm.
good composition, good levels of talent, champions, lots of trophies. Like I think they had everything right. It's just that there's something like real nasty in the culture of the team that seems to be spilling over to every move they make. I'm kind of tired of being like this is who they need to change because I have a suspicion you put Nertz on another lineup and he does really well. I have a suspicion you put
Sure.
like that Shuhei calls for another team, and it's like he proves himself just like he did on Game Religion or that he did on Mouse NXT. Like it doesn't make sense how bad they are. I almost hope they crash and burn entirely so they can like reset. It's a shame. It would be a shame. They're kind of like one of the only teams that we have
Mm.
in with North American history and whatever. But just don't even like watching them, to be honest, because I know they're gonna lose. It's like way
Sure.
worse than Falcons, because at least Falcons,
Mm.
like they're gonna make playoffs, and you get a
At least they're
screenshot out
too
of it.
skilled.
Liquid's like not funny when they.
Yeah. You can't even get the screenshots because they're not even putting themselves in the 5v3s. And even if they do, it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
here
yeah,
we're not sure if they know how they should play the situation. No, I'm taking the piss. Obviously they do, but
yeah,
yeah, Liquid's been a sad one. Just to end it on a positive note, I'd say looking at the current situation, obviously this is susceptible to change because we still have EPL coming up, we still have Rotterdam coming up, and a bunch of other events before the cutoff. But I am excited seeing that teams like Hall2 with Norbert that
yeah.
just won a LAN event. They just won the Roman Imperium Cup literally a week ago, and they were second at a LAN event that happened in Istanbul as well before that. Teams like
True.
that, teams like Bed Boom that qualified for IEM Atlanta as well after winning the close qualifier, like Gentlemates that won that Istanbul LAN and then lost to Hall2 in the final of the other one that Hall2 won, and teams like Monty as well are in the zone. I feel like there's been a whole bunch of these teams that are playing all the close qualifiers, playing all the smaller LANs, and maybe some bigger ones as well every now and then that are actually playing high quality Counter-Strike. I feel like, especially for
Yeah,
teams like Bed Boom, Hotto, and Monty, those are the three teams that are the revelations for me from the tier 2 scene, alongside Foot, obviously, but Foot is just an echelon higher at this point, I guess. But there is a lot of the way I will put it, for the first time in a long time, I wouldn't be sad if bigger organizations like Big, Liquid, NIP, Heroic don't make it at the cost of Hot to Bed Boom, Gentlemates, and Monty making it. Because I feel like these teams
agreed.
deserve it more.
They play greats, yeah. So,
Yeah.
like all those shoutouts are awesome. Actually, got the chance to cast each of them this year. Hotu were so impressive. They just short run at blast. Same thing with Monty,
Yeah. That's
with
the
Gizme and
Bulgarian buff,
everything.
man. That's the Bulgarian buff. The Bulgarian UK
Yeah,
buff. That's how it goes.
that's right. It's great to see Rainwaker getting another shot at the top, and yeah, like they actually played excellent, fresh, fun to watch.
Yeah.
Like it's enthusiastic. It's all hope, right? It's not baggage. It's teams that believe in themselves that haven't even seen the losses yet. They're just here for the ride. Like that's exactly what you want. So no, I don't give a fuck about trying to protect the legacy orgs in any meaningful sense. Like
Mm,
this has to be a meritocracy, like for the sake of the viewer, right? Like the whole reason we
sure.
got into partner teams was so that like, the best teams in the world would make it. Who gives a shit what the org is? It's really how good is the team to watch, how much of a run can like when you watch Foot play and no one, just making foot jokes the whole cast or whatever. Like aside from that, this team is insane. Like they're
Sure.
they're so good. They're a real skill check. They get their
Mm,
full credit. You saw Major said they shoot harder than fucking Vitality and Furia and Mouse.
yeah.
There's a lot of stories bubbling up from there. So, listen, if you're a really big team like Liquid, just buy all like just totally buy a new team, completely buy a new team. You got the amazing cafeteria and the gym and the performance coach and the facilities and whatever. Just buy the whole lineup. Stop
Maybe
trying to
that's
be
the
cool
issue.
and build a team.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's the issue. Maybe Foot don't have that. Maybe they just have those kids locked in a basement and they're like, you're going to be playing for 20 hours today or you're not getting
True.
any food. And that's why they're getting the results.
I was talking to was a guy like Constantine from Spirit, and
Yeah.
he's like guys like Donk, like you need to go to the middle of Russia, and then that's the only way you find somebody who has the hunger to do what
quite,
Donk can
quite
do.
literally has the hunger.
You got to go to Tomsk, and then you maybe can find a player like that, but you can't find a pampered, North American, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know,
No.
they
It's
they
you
want
gotta
they want
go.
vacation days
Sure.
and extra lunch break and an HR department. Like we don't have time for that.
Man, this is like going to scout. It's like you have to go to bloody Siberia or whatever, the places where they just
Yeah,
stock the meat and the fish outside because it's cold enough to keep it fresh. It's kind of like
yeah,
going hunting. I still remember, well, hunting, just looking for players and people in the Balkans as well. You just go to like a 17, 18-year-old kid and you're like, off days? No, you're giving me 600 euros per month to play this game. I'm
Right.
signing that contract for 5 years. Bring it on.
Yeah.
Is the
Yeah.
type of vibe you're getting out of these young guys. But I actually like it, to be fair. I do enjoy the fact that these players are being given the opportunity to earn a fortune and make a living. But it is signifying that these people love the game and they just do it out of the literally the love and the passion that they have for what they do, and not just because monetarily is a good thing to be doing. Sometimes having more is less.
Mhm.
um
Absolutely.
and on that note, I think we can put an end to the this episode of the TED Talk. I don't want to push it for 1:30. That's because I was always also 10 minutes late, so I do owe you 10 minutes.
No stress.
uh but yeah, as you said at the start of the show, I usually save these for the end, but I'm very pleasantly surprised that you did it. I'm very happy you did it. But this show is kindly brought to you, folks, by AceZone, and you can go and check out the highest quality headsets in the world of gaming and esports. And yeah, the headsets that me and Launders are wearing right now, they are going to be releasing in-ears as well soon. I'm not sure. A lot of pro players are testing them right now. Lo, have you tested them? What are we thinking?
No, mine are
No?
getting sent to me right now, so I'll get to try them. But yeah, a lot of the you've already got Apex and zywoo wearing them. You've got a few other players, some of the heroic guys, I think, and some of the other teams have already I've talked to that want to give those a test. So like, yeah, there is nobody better than AceZone when it comes to the audio technology in CST right now. Like they know how to make the best of the best stuff. And like I've been there, and they had
Mm.
the room where you can test the sound canceling and the with the arena noise from like Rio, and they have the crowd mics from Rio because they were there. They
Yeah.
have the blasting on speakers, and you can sit there with a regular pair of AceZones on, and not even like the tournament ones,
Yeah.
and not hear a thing, and be able to communicate into
Yeah.
your mic at the same time. So, no, they're next level.
They are. I think that they had these tests running in they might have had them recently at an event, but the first one I remember was Copenhagen 2024 PGL. And yeah, I tested it. It was great. So yeah, make sure you go and check out AceZone, folks. You can see the logo on the top right here. And you can use code TED and probably code LAO, I'd imagine, right?
We can use code TED.
But we could they could use both of them. It's one big happy mafia family. That's how it
Yeah.
goes, and you're getting 10% off of that, obviously, with that. But yeah, Londers, thank you very much for joining me. It was an absolute pleasure. You can leave a final message for the outro of this one. What do you want to say to the people watching? And then we're cutting off.
Okay. Uh, in all of your faced pugs, just remember you always have enough money for a deagle.
Amen to that. The Digo Eco 1300. You don't need more. See you next time.